There was reporting, something I was talking to Kaylee about earlier. Admiral Brad Cooper was the one who advised the president to cool it, suggesting that this continued strike against the Strait was not effective any longer. Some suggested that that decision was motivated by dwindling supplies of munitions. What do you make of it?
So first, we always have to be careful about what happens behind closed doors, right? It's like bad high school gossip 50% of the time, maybe 51. So if Admiral Cooper did indeed say that, my guess is what he was really trying to indicate to the president is here are your viable range of military options. And so should you continue to prosecute the war this way, here are the risks the ships will incur because of the interceptors. And I think more importantly, what most people miss is you can't separate the way we fight in Iran from the way we plan to deter China, from the way we plan to deter Russia. Because a lot of the component parts for these missiles are common across multiple missiles. And so Admiral Cooper, given his experience, lifetime of service in multiple combatant commands and at sea, isn't just looking at this in his responsibility as CENTCOM commander. He's also making sure he's giving what we call best military advice to the president. So the president weighs the costs of an additional 30, 60 days of a campaign with an unclear political outcome or transition versus the cost and risk it incurs to deter those other possibilities on the horizon.
So is it fair to say that this isn't about inability to continue potentially heavy operations against Iran? It's the opportunity cost of what that pursuit would mean for other theaters.
See, this is why I love Bloomberg. Nowhere else could we talk about terms like opportunity cost. You hit it on the head, right? So it's not, we absolutely have our capabilities to do this. And people forget, in that initial 30-day campaign, there was a period of time where we switched from standoff precision munitions to we had so decimated their air defenses, we could fly in and drop laser-guided bombs and even GPS-guided munitions. We have got tons of those. So it's not that we can't fight. It's a question of the way you want to fight relative to the military objective. So where a naval voice would be concerned is if I'm going to escort ships through the Strait and basically make the oil markets happy again, that means I'm going to have a lot of defensive measures in place to counter Iranian coastal defense cruise missiles, to counter those fast boats, to even counter drones. And most of our munitions are sadly still built to be $1 to $4 million interceptors being shot at a 10 to 20,000, even $1 million. So the cost effectiveness of the exchange decreases the efficacy of the operation. And so that's the real opportunity cost they're juggling. Now, what you're hitting on, I think most people miss too, is that there are actually really interesting ways, should military operations commence, because a pause for me always equals planning and getting in position, that I think we're starting to see. So a lot of people missed how important that Saronic Corsair strike was about a week ago, how important it is that we have Task Force 82nd. So the Army is in the Middle East sinking ships, not just the Navy.
That Corsair is the autonomous boat that we saw in action. We talked about that.
That is cost effective. If I shoot 3 to 5 of those at $1 million a piece to hit an Iranian sub in the pier that's worth $100 to $200 million, that's cost effective fighting. That's a different campaign structure. So I actually think people are discounting the creativity of ways we could prosecute this campaign. It's just a question of how quickly can we scale up those unmanned surface vehicles. How many HIMARS or PRISM missiles are we willing to let the Army shoot and even the Marines shoot while we're still building up our industrial base to recapitalize the I think it was 96 hours, 5,200 exquisite munitions used.
Fascinating. So we're talking about Iran so far, and I'm sure we're not done yet, but when you add the cause in Ukraine, this conversation gets to be a little bit more complicated. If interceptor missiles are the commodity, that's exactly what President Zelensky is asking for. I know they have a license to make them. Do they simply need to make their own, or do we have anything to offer?
I think all the above. I mean, sadly, even if we did get that license, it's going to take a year to possibly 2 to 3 to put that in place. This isn't like an IKEA kit where you and I go home, or if hopefully you're better than I am. My IKEA kits usually fail.
That wouldn't work for me either,
so the PAC-3 Interceptor IKEA kit is not a build it yourself in 1 day, 1 month, 1 year. And it's going to require infrastructure that's targetable by the Russians. So there's a real real cat and mouse game. So it's going to have to be developing additional low-cost interceptors. A lot of this is an intelligence game. So you've heard reporting come out now where Ukrainian commanders will routinely let certain missiles through because they can, through intelligence, tell they're not going to hit something of value or a population center. So that means it's less interceptors to fire at the target. And the real bottleneck here is common for, it doesn't matter if it's a Patriot interceptor, THAAD, a Tomahawk missile, comes down to a few key components. So one, ammonia perchlorate. So it's a weird chemical that allows you to have solid rocket motors or small rocket motors fire. We have only one plant in the US that makes ammonia perchlorate. High explosives. We sadly have only one plant in Tennessee that makes the type of high explosives, turbofans. So the things that are working on a lot of the cruise missiles in particular, we got one plant in Michigan. So it doesn't matter how much money you throw at the problem, there is still a massive industrial backlog and supply chain issue that the Trump administration has recognized, but it's going to take us years to work through that.
And yet they've requested a $1.5 trillion defense budget for the upcoming fiscal year. What you're telling us, Ben, is effectively you could get the money, but you aren't going to be able to spend it very quickly because the industrial base isn't there to back it up.
Absolutely. You will get it in pieces. And to be fair, I think, you know, he doesn't do a lot of media, but Secretary Feinberg has really been the person behind the scenes moving this forward. And that's why you have now not 5, but 7-year deals. And so you have to spend now to get the missiles coming online to scale production. But you're right, it's not going to happen anytime soon, which is why you've seen a separate initiative that's really creative of trying to bankroll cheap munition projects. So you've had 3 announced in like the last year. One was the Air Force's, was like the family of affordable missiles. It almost sounds like a Honda Odyssey for the family to go shoot someone. But it's affordable missiles. There's a new one, the ground-based affordable missile. So $250,000 or less to shoot a long-range munition that's autonomous. And so these contracts are being structured cleverly to enable competition and allow people to then actually see if we can alter the entire incentive structure for the industrial base. So I have a mix of new players and primes to meet the demand signal in the market.
Wow, really interesting. Ukraine entered the theater in an amazing way over the past 24 to 48 hours, actually striking an Iranian
Caspian Sea
commercial vessel in the Caspian Sea. Are those parts that you're talking about what Iran was delivering to Russia?
Maybe. Mostly what Iran can deliver to Russia right now are component parts for Shahed. So we heard the term Shahed. We've talked about it. The Russians are actually getting more effect out of their own version of it called the Geran, and they're making them rocket-powered as well. So my guess is the Iranians were sending drone components. I don't know, though. But honestly, the more President Trump can do to encourage Zelensky to take those strikes, the more we can do. I mean, why build it when we can buy a Ukrainian one too? They can produce more drones than even they can use in this conflict. So we probably need to start getting more creative more quickly of those weapons pairings matching I'm talking about. Why fire a $5 million missile when a $100,000 drone will do?
Well, and speaking of the cheap drones, do we have a sense, Ben, of how many Iran has left, to what extent they're still capable of building them? Because we have continually heard from President Trump that it's not just their drones, their ballistic missiles, their Navy, all of it has been destroyed, and yet we're still hitting targets, and they still clearly have the capability to at least fire at U.S. assets, even if most of them are intercepted. So what's the actual status of Iran's capability?
So it's so hard to know. I think the president was being genuine, and definitely Admiral Cooper, when they gave the battle damage assessment up front, but that was really striking the conventional Iranian forces and known forces. What Iran has learned from North Korea is to dig, baby, dig. They go underground. So they have entire factories built underground to produce drones, to produce components. And that's what makes it a very huge intelligence challenge. So you never fully are confident you got all of the production sites. So even if you can have an intelligence estimate, say, yes, you destroyed, by definition, destroyed isn't 100%, it can be like 75 to 80. They're still producing more, and because the drones are cheap, they can produce more. We knew even in the initial strikes that we were hitting the launchers, that we never were getting all of the ballistic missiles. What surprised me is the speed with which Iran has recovered the ability to shoot ballistic missiles. So there's definitely some disconnect there that I'm not sure what it is. The scariest one is that Iran also has built its launchers to look like commercial vehicles. So we still believe in the law of armed conflict, so we're not going to shoot something that looks like a school bus but it turns out it's actually a launcher for a anti-ship cruise missile. So there's a lot of deception involved in this that makes it really difficult to say with confidence what you did destroy. And sadly, Iran doesn't need that much to conduct sea and area denial. They can fire a salvo of 5 to 30 ballistic missiles every month and hundreds of drones every month in intermittent intervals, and it keeps us on a defensive footing. That's the difficulty of breaking that type of defense.
Can I ask before they give us the hook just quickly,
Yeah.
what do we need to drop on Pickaxe Mountain to get that far underground? Is that the mother of all bombs, or is it something we haven't seen?
I don't think a Moab would do it, given
Really?
how deep it is. I think what you're probably going to have to do is fall back to one of the true enduring truth of special forces. The infinite design of an operation is relative force superiority, meaning it's probably going to have to be one of the most sophisticated special forces missions in history.
Do you put people down there?
You'd have
in
to put an
tunnels?
outer cordon and basically absorb Iranian counterattacks while you have specialized engineers and special forces teams go down and either detonate and collapse the mountain from within or take the uranium out if it's there.
Amazing.
So maybe not as easy as the president is
Yeah,
suggesting it
right.
would be if there's no deal.